If you've tried time and time again to do EQ on your mix bus and it's always just made your mix sound worse, this is the video for you. Today we're going to be talking about my favorite hack for getting an incredible mix bus EQ. Let's get started. Hey everybody, this is Dylan Pines with Musician on a Mission, and today I've got another tutorial video for you. This time we are going to be talking about mix bus EQ. And one trick that I use to get an incredible sounding mix bus EQ so that we can get such a good start to our mix. So if you don't really know what this is, mix bus EQ is basically just where you put an EQ directly on your output at the very beginning of your mix and do some very broad EQ cuts and boosts to kind of just get the general foundation of your tone right before you even really get started with the mix. It's an extremely helpful technique that tons of professional audio engineers do, and it's something that I do on every single one of my mixes. Now, there is a little trick that I like to do to not only get a better EQ, but also to get it done way faster and get it done in such a way where it's going to translate into as many speakers as possible. But before we get started, I do want to show you a quick before and after example. This is what you're going to learn how to do. This is a completely unmixed song, and all I did is I ahead of time went through the process that I'm going to be showing you in this video, and you're going to be able to hear a pretty crazy difference. So let's listen to the before and after. It's wild, right? It sounds like it's already been mixed about halfway, and all I've done is put on some really well-placed EQ moves onto my mix bus. So I've stalled long enough. Let's just get into what this trick actually is. So there's a lot of steps to setting up this trick, but basically what we're going to be talking about is Match EQ. So what Match EQ is, it's basically a plugin that listens to your mix, and then it listens to a reference that you might want to match the general tone of, and then it gives you a curve that basically allows you to say, like, okay, if I was to try to get the average frequency response of my mix to sound like the average frequency response of this professional recording, this professional mix, what would I have to do? It basically just spits out the average for us. Now, I don't actually like using the end result of this. Some people do. I like using this more as a guide, more as a way to say, like, okay, well, I know we've got some issues in the low end. I know we have too little energy in the top end because we're having to boost, and I know we're having some issues with having too much energy in the mids. So there's your spoiler alert. That's what we're going to be building up to, but let's go through our step-by-step process to actually get there. Now, the first thing we're going to be doing is to import our reference track. And if you don't know what a reference track is, a reference track or a reference mix is also called, these are basically professional mixes, professionally released mixes. They're in the genre that you're going for. They have the general tone that you're going for. They have similar instrumentation to the song that you're mixing. But the big thing is that they are professionally mixed. You're going to be able to get a much more balanced sound if you are constantly referencing another mix that's been released to sound good on the radio. You're going to get something that not only sounds good in your speakers, in your studio, but something that translates to all different kinds of speakers, because that's what these professional mixes have to do. They've got to sound good anywhere. So let me actually import my reference track, and I actually have one already pre-selected for this, and it's the song Just What I Needed by The Cars. I just really feel like that fits kind of the vibe of this mix. I guess you're just what I needed. Just what I needed. I needed someone to feed. I feel like that's really, fitting pretty well with, if you remember what our sound was up here. I don't wanna get bitter and twisted. Just kind of a general consistency there. So now that you've imported your track, the next thing you're going to want to do is to gain stage that track. You want your reference mix to be the same level that your mix is going to be. Otherwise, it's going to be so difficult for you to actually use your ears and compare them back and forth. Because if the reference mix is louder, it's always going to sound better. And if the reference mix is quieter, then it's always going to sound worse. So in order to do that, I haven't done my volume balance yet, so it's a little bit difficult to do any sort of gain staging. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to shoot for kind of hitting around the same level for my reference track and for my entire mix. So in order to do that, I'm going to grab a loudness plugin or a LUFS meter. Most DAWs have these. If your DAW doesn't have this stock, then there are free ones out there. But it's basically just an advanced volume meter. It shows you how loud something is to the human ear, because the human ear doesn't actually hear sound accurately. We hear sound in averages, and we hear different parts of the frequency spectrum at different levels. So a loudness meter is created kind of just to be a more accurate volume meter to what we're hearing, even though it's a less accurate volume meter to what's happening in the real world. But for something like this, for gain staging, it's great. I'm going to shoot for, let's just say 18 decibels. That's a good, solid area to kind of be sitting around.
I guess you're just what I needed. That's what I needed. I needed someone to feed.
And you're trying to get it to sit around 18 on like S or I. Those are the ones that are the most calibrated to the human ear. It looks like we're sitting kind of more around -15. So I'm going to take my volume and I'm going to take it down by about 3.5. This is just for my reference. Let's hit play again.
I guess you're just what I needed. That's what I needed. I needed someone to feed. I guess you're just what I needed.
Let's take it just to 3, and I think we'll be good right there. So now that we've done our gain staging, our next step is to go and actually do our volume balance. And it's really important. You always want to do your volume balance before you start on your mix bus EQ. You want to do your volume balance before you do any of your mix bus processing. And the reason for that is that your volume balance is going to be the foundation that the rest of your mix sits on. If you don't already have it created, then adding a few of these extra tweaks to what is basically a bunch of rubble on the ground is not actually going to help that much. Now, I'm not going to go over this video the best strategies of doing a volume balance. There's a lot of different ways to do it. So I'm just going to get this done real quick and we'll move along. All right, so now we've got a volume balance. Let's take a listen.
I don't wanna get really twisted. I don't wanna join in.
It's fine, for your initial volume balance. There's a lot of stuff that needs to be done to it, of course, but another time. So what's the next thing that we're going to do? Well, we need to set up our own mix bus. And you might be asking a very valid question, which is, Dylan, I thought the mix bus was just the stereo output. It's just the last channel, before the DAW sends stuff out to your speakers, right? That's all that is. And yeah, you're not wrong. But also, if we want to use reference tracks, right? And we want to use them in our DAW, and we also want to do mix bus processing. Well, if we put any of that mix bus processing on the mix bus and our reference track is also flowing through that exact same mix bus, then we're never going to be able to actually use it the way we need to. Because every single time we change something on the mix bus, every single time we do some EQ move or some compression or anything like that, then the reference is going to change too. It's like a constantly moving target. So in order to fix that, we are going to set up our own mix bus. And it's really simple. All you're going to want to do, go to your mix window, you're going to select all of your tracks, and instead of having them go to your regular stereo output, you're going to change that to a bus. And we'll just say bus 1. And now over here, we have a little aux track that just popped up. I'm going to call this mix bus. And here's the cool thing. We now have only 2 tracks that are flowing into the stereo output. Our mix bus, or our fake mix bus, and a reference track, which means anything that I put on the mix bus is actually not going to affect the reference track. The reference is now completely independent of our mix bus, so we can do any kind of mix bus processing we want. So now that that's done, we just need to add our plugins. So we're going to be putting our match EQ on the stereo output because we want both our mix and our reference flowing into that plugin. And we're going to put just our regular EQ only on our mix bus. So for my regular EQ, I'm just going to use FabFilter's Pro Q just because I really like it. I think it sounds great. And for the match EQ, there's a lot of different EQ plugins out there that do this. They even have some stock plugins that do this. For example, Logic has a pretty decent match EQ. So I'm going to go to my EQ and I'm going to select match EQ. So now that we've gotten everything set up, it's time to actually start our match EQing. We're going to actually start using the plugin. So the first thing we're going to do is to solo our mix bus. We're going to go over here to current. We're going to click learn. And basically the match EQ plugin is just going to start listening to the sound of our mix and just getting a general average of what the frequency response of it is. So I'm going to hit play and we're just going to watch.
I don't wanna get bitter and twisted. I don't wanna join in. I don't wanna get bitter and twisted. I just wanna stay comfortable in my...
And you want to let it go for probably 10 seconds or so, just so that it can really get a full average, a decent picture of your mix. Now let's go over and click on reference. We're going to solo our reference instead. We're going to click learn.
I guess you're just what I needed. Just what I needed. I needed someone to feed. I guess you're just what I needed. Just what I needed. I needed someone to please.
All right, now we're going to go over to our EQ curve and we're going to select match. So now we can see where our problems are. We can see that we've got too much in the subs. We've got too much in the mids because our match EQ is telling us that we need to cut some in the mids. We've got too little in our bass area and we've got too little in our upper mids and our highs. So this is a great template for us to get started with our own EQ. Now, the reason that I usually don't tell people to just use whatever the match EQ gives you is because, well, A, you don't have much control over it. Like I can't go in here and move stuff around. B, my song is not my reference. I'm trying to get it close, but I don't want it to match exactly. It's in a different key. It's got different sounding instruments. If I got it to match exactly, it would probably sound like a mess. For example, I don't want to take out a lot of this sub energy. My reference track is something from the 70s, and they couldn't record stuff that low. But now we can, and we have speakers that can play it back. So I'm probably not going to cut that much. Or I'm probably not going to need to have this massive boost here at the top end. That's probably just because of where my current tracks are sitting. That's something that I can do on my own. I'm able to make these kinds of decisions without actually having to just sit with whatever the mix EQ has given me. So with that said, we're going to move on and actually use it as our guide. Now I'm going to turn this off because I just want to use it visually, basically. And I'm going to go in here. And again, I just know sort of the general areas that I'm wanting to tweak. I'm wanting to probably do some boosting in my lows, my upper mids, and my highs. And I'm probably going to want to do some cutting in my lower mids, my mids, maybe just a little bit in my subs. So I'm just going to hit play and I'm going to start creating my EQ moves.
I don't wanna get bitter and twisted. I don't wanna join in. I don't wanna get bitter and twisted. I just wanna stay comfortable in my... I don't wanna get bitter and twisted. I don't wanna join in. I don't wanna get bitter and twisted. I just wanna stay comfortable in my... I don't wanna get bitter and twisted. I don't wanna
Okay, that's sounding pretty good to me. Now for mix bus EQs, I try not to be too aggressive. You usually want pretty broad, pretty wide cues. You don't want to do massive boosts or anything like that. I mean, if I stuck with this is telling me I need to boost 5 to 10 decibels, right? And obviously there's a mix knob over here, so I don't actually have to do that if I was to use this plugin, but I'm not going to take its full advice. I'm just trying to nudge it in the right direction. I'm not trying to get it exactly there. That's what the mix is for. Now, before we can move on, we need to make sure that we gain stage our EQ. Whenever you make any kind of large EQ moves, any aggressive EQ moves, you're probably changing the volume of your track. And until you actually fix that, you're not really going to be able to hear it accurately. So I'm just going to go and grab my loudness meter again, and I'm just going to do a before and after, and I'm going to see, if I need to turn up or down the gain so that it's sitting around the same level.
I don't wanna get bitter and twisted. I don't wanna join in. I don't wanna get bitter.
Okay, so, around 17, negative 17.5. So now let's check what it's like on.
I don't wanna get bitter and twisted. I don't wanna join in. I don't wanna get bitter.
So it's actually only lost maybe half a dB. We did a pretty good job of balancing out our EQ moves. But sometimes I'll do this and I have to add or take away 2 or 3 decibels. It's not uncommon. Let's just do 1 dB.
I don't wanna get bitter and twisted. I don't wanna join in. I don't wanna get bitter.
Okay, cool. So now we're at our final step, which is just to tweak our settings. We got it kind of in a general area that we're going to want it, but I never want to just add settings and move on wholesale. I want to go and I want to compare it to my reference back and forth and see what I can do to improve it.
I don't wanna get bitter and twisted. I need just what I needed. I needed someone to feed. I guess you're just what I needed. Just what I needed. Bitter and twisted. I don't want. I needed someone to feed. Bitter and twisted. I just wanna stay comfortable in my. I don't wanna get bitter and twisted. I don't wanna join in. I don't wanna get bitter and twisted. I just wanna stay comfortable in my. I don't wanna get bitter and twisted. I don't wanna join in. I don't wanna get bitter. I guess you're just what I need. Just what I want.
Yeah, that's feeling really good to me. The fact that I can go back and forth and it sounds like I'm skipping between songs on Spotify that's what you're going for. I still obviously have a ton of mixing left to do on this song, but until I can go back and forth and it doesn't sound that weird to switch, my mix bus EQ is not quite there. I just want to show you again this before and after. I don't know if I would have been able to come up with an EQ curve like this had I not used my little match EQ trick. But honestly, this is going to get us just so far right from the beginning.
I don't wanna get bitter and twisted. I don't wanna join in. I don't wanna get bitter and twisted. I just wanna stay comfortable in my. I don't wanna get bitter and twisted. I don't wanna join in. I don't wanna get bitter and twisted. I just.
Love it. So it's as simple as that. That's how you use Match EQ to get a better sounding mix bus. But even if you get this right, this isn't going to give you a professional mix. There's so many things that you have to do and have to learn and have to practice before you can get a radio-ready song. So that's why Rob Mazes, the founder of Musician on a Mission, he put together a free workshop where he shares the 7 steps to making radio-ready music at home. He's created a whole new approach to home recording and mixing that's going to help you to do all of this stuff just so much faster. And he's not alone in this. Over 60,000 people have already been through this workshop and they've seen results in their music in just a few days. So now it's your turn. If you want to learn the exact 7 steps that are going to take your mixes to a professional standard in under a year and are going to keep you from wasting precious time and money and effort on all the wrong things, then go and check out this free workshop right now. Just click the link on screen or in the description below to get your own personal access. It's totally free, and seriously, you're going to love it. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe. We make tips and tutorials just like this one every single week on this channel. We'd love to help you grow in any way we can. So that's going to be it from me. This has been Dylan Pines with Musician on a Mission. And remember, create regardless.